Hey, howdy. We're back. More Yumatuki. Y'all know the deal by now. I'm gonna be doing some wandering, some yapping, some dailies. Such is life. And if I saw correctly, yeah, it's Frozen Woods, which is from Second Nexus, right? I think I had it pulled up. Yeah. So you could go super deep into the Kotensu locations, or you could just go through Second Nexus. So I'll just go through Second Nexus. Oh wait, wrong door. Oh, the frog. it's the frog dog from we just saw these guys. What are you doing here, little guy? Oh, right. Is this what I think it is? Is this the Sugar Road connection, or where does this lead? I don't know if I've done this one yet. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This leads to Mini Nexus. Got it. I keep seeing like new rooms being added. This Urasuki's dream apartments are slowly turning into an actual apartment complex. Okay, so where the heck was Bright Forest? It was Solstice Forest, right? It's not Bright Forest. So it was right next to the Nexus. And I think it's this door. Could be the other one. It is this door. And then I believe it's this way, right? To Rainbow Ruins, and then Rainbow Ruins to Second Nexus. Did I see that right? Or I guess Bright Forest, not Rainbow Ruins. The sub-area is called Rainbow Ruins. And there you are. Okay. I do really like this area. I like this game a lot. Maybe it goes without saying at this point, but I do like this game a lot. I like Kontensu's stuff a lot. Like, Kontensu's stuff is very unique, very interesting, very competently made. The 28 memes are funny, but Kontensu's stuff genuinely has a lot of heart put into it. Okay, apartments. What's the best way to get to apartments? I guess it's through the, what am I thinking of? The division proof. It's around here somewhere, but they've reorganized this a little bit. Man. It's been a while since I've even... Oh, I didn't even notice that it's the lime green tabs that are the connections, so this one over here. I was looking at the white. It's this one. I'm sorry, Division Proof Kid. I'm sorry for whatever the heck happened to you. And, like, that style of, like, diary writing where the patient slowly gets more and more deteriorated. That's a... Oh god, is it a Silent Hill reference? Oh, what is Itchy Tasty from? It's from one of those. I think it's either Silent Hill or Resident Evil. I think it's Resident Evil. Because it's also, it's aped on pretty directly in UFO 50 as well, but the, what's it called? Night Manor. An asphalt monolith, that's the outskirts, that's the really cool area with the wolf. Yeah, here it is. The wolf's awesome. Oh shoot. There's a toy drive at my place of work. I just got an email about that. I felt bad. In later years, like once I'm actually able to do the work more consistently, I want to be able to take part in those like charity things. Because I know that my office does like Thanksgiving canned food drive and stuff like that, but I've been up here and on campus for the whole semester, so I haven't been able to give anything. But like you gotta give something. If you're in a position where you're fortunate, this is something that I've thought of a lot when it comes to like altruism and giving for the sake of giving. Because we ended up having a whole discussion about this in, I want to say it was. Was it AP Psychology? It was a class in high school where we talked about it. We talked about what it meant to be altruistic. It might have been in one of the English classes because it was meant to be intentionally provocative and to like get you to think about it, to get you to write about it. But it's interesting to consider altruism because it's. At face value, altruism is kind of, there's some people that make the argument that altruism is impossible. And the argument that they make is that altruism is... The definition of altruism is helping someone without expecting to receive a benefit. But in 99% of scenarios, no one is going to give anything unless they get something back out of it, even if they convince themselves otherwise. Like, people still donate to charity to feel good. Oh wow, that's a loud sound. These worlds must be relatively new, because none of them are mapped out. And I don't recall seeing any of these before. But the argument was that altruism does not exist, because in order for altruism to exist, you'd have to be miserable, essentially. You would have to be able to do something with... Oh, this is just back where I came. You would have to be able to do something, take no joy in it, get no value out of it, but do it anyway, essentially just for the love of the game. But even then, you'd be getting something out of it. So, like, you would have to be miserable, you would have to... Essentially, you'd have to hate every minute of it. You'd have to hate every minute of it, and then the question becomes, why would you do it then? But I feel like the counter-argument to that is just that that's not super... That's not a good way to describe much of anything. Like, yes, on paper, that's technically correct, but, like... The lone tortilla chip... The lone tortilla chip? Okay, hang on, I'm going through Scorched Wasteland. What the hell do you mean this the lone tortilla chip? But the argument that was often made is that it doesn't really matter. It's like, you're still giving at the end of the day. And that's still, that is more than enough. But it's a common problem with philosophy, that there's... You can do a lot of whataboutisms with philosophy, because a lot of the questions boil down to, like, if you really think about it, this is a contradictory statement, because this, that, and the other. And then another person can turn around and go, so what? Like, one that I've thrown around, I've thrown this around myself a lot, is there is a thought experiment called the Chinese room experiment. And this is a weird one. The premise of this thought experiment is, imagine that you have, let me see if I'm getting this right. Imagine that you have a device in a room, and it's a black box. You have no idea what it's actually doing. All you do know is that you put in a series of Chinese characters, and it outputs the English translation of those characters. And you can kind of like fiddle with it, you can do whatever you want, you can leave it for as long as you'd like for it to continue learning specific combinations, and like this specific set of characters means this translation. And the thought experiment, and this was long before the age of generative AI, but the question that was raised was, is the machine actually learning? Like, what is the definition of learning in that case? And at the time, the argument was made that no, it's not learning. That it's simply pattern recognition. But it's a whole back and forth of, okay, well, what is the difference between learning and pattern recognition? Because at least on paper, they should be the same thing. Okay, Gamer's Room, Salsa Desert is... Oh, Salsa Desert is in there. Okay, so I guess I am going to the route that has Paradise. But the conversation quickly becomes, like, does it really matter? Because, like, rigorously, the answer is no. The machine can't learn because the machine is just regurgitating what has been given in the past. And it has some complex behavior to try and emulate what could be considered learning, but it's not actually learning. But at the same time, like, what is learning then? Especially when you start to look at things like the education system, especially America's education system, where there are some liberties taken, let's say, and it is 99% recall and not actual understanding, which, if we're going off of the assumption that I was just talking about, would imply that a lot of people that are in, like, going and, like, learning for their job or learning for school to get a grade are not actually learning shit. It's just pattern recognition. And you'd think that given that, people would try to have a more... Oh, what is this music? Abandoned Joes? Abandoned Joes? Huh. I guess it's not fall. But there's also a similar conversation with stuff like the ship of Theseus and other like thought experiments slash things that are learned by teenagers to screw with their friends. The one-handed claps and water is wets of the world that are they're just brought up to bug people. Where it's like, you could technically spend all day arguing over the semantics of it, but it doesn't really matter. And in those cases where it does matter, we can come back to the question and really analyze it. Because the Ship of Theseus is a fun one. Because I like it because it involves mythology. So the deal with the Ship of Theseus is that it was Theseus's ship that, over time, more and more parts were taken out of the ship and replaced, and it just continued in that fashion of adding, removing, to the point where there was not a single piece of that ship that was still the original part. And the question that was posed was, is that still the same ship? Can you still call that the Ship of Theseus when it has none of its composite parts? And this one isn't quite as challenging, I think, because I feel like it has a definite answer, because the answer it's based on a single interpretation instead of a very complex school of thought. The interpretation is just whether or not, Downfall... Oh god, where the hell is Downfall Garden? I forgot this map is gigantic. River Road, Downfall Garden, there it is. It just revolves around that the interpretation of whether the interpretation of what a ship is happens all at once or whether it's segmented. If it's segmented, then the answer is no. If it's segmented, then the answer is yes, because it is the same ship, because at every point where you see that ship, you are still able to clock it as the same ship. So it's not a case of everything is removed, it's now a completely different ship. It's every time you look at the ship, it has a piece missing. Which would quantify it as being the same ship, just with a different part. And you can just repeat that process, same ship, different part, same ship, different part, but every time you're changing your viewpoint every time you review the ship. What is this? Hang on. I don't know where it just spat me out. I see the crimson... Did I say crimson share area? I'm curious about this. But the other side of the coin is that if you argue for specifically the starting point and the end point, then yes, it is correct. Oh, wait, this is a location. Wait, this is where I needed to go. Hang on. Whoa. Whoa, awesome. Ooh, that's bright. That's really bright. Apologies. I'll have to give a flashing lights warning. Jesus. Okay, I'm done with this place. Maybe there's something else in here, but that flashing effect is really bothering me. Oh god, Field of Cosmos. This is the fun path. Awesome. Like, Ship of Theseus is a fun one. Water is Wet is more of like a pure semantic thing that is just there to screw with people. Because like, the answer is it doesn't matter because it's purely based on your definition of the word wet. So you could argue about the semantics all day. Because it feels like there's two types of those kinds of questions, and it really, like, it changes the intent a lot, whether it's a question about an interpretation of a problem or an interpretation of a word or phrase. Because if it's an interpretation of a problem, then you get a lot more interesting stuff. You get stuff like the trolley problem. But if it's just an interpretation of a word, then it's just people going back and forth of, oh, I think it's this, I think it's that. And a lot of these are, and now that I think about it, a lot of them kind of did get popularized through like Vsauce and other like YouTube like pop science channels from, not recently, but like I guess relatively recently in the grand scheme of things. I often wonder about the value of like pop science stuff like that. And I feel like it's still really, really valuable. There we go. Because it's not, it reminds you a lot of Mythbusters in a way. Like, it's not super scientifically rigorous, but it does not need to be. Sometimes all you need for someone to get interested in science is to blow something up. Or to, like, bring up a question about some interesting... I don't even know. You bring up, like, a point about some metaphor, and you go, oh, is that metaphor actually pertinent to real life? Like, can you actually shoot fish in a barrel? I don't know, let's test it. It doesn't need to be super scientifically rigorous or verbose, you just do it. And if it works, it works, if it doesn't, it doesn't, but you learn something cool. I didn't even have to go all the way into Field of Cosmos. I know I normally, as soon as I see that path, I usually go all the way up to Radiant Apartments, but I'm going to stop myself this time. Excuse me, water. Chocolate Tower. Oh, this is the unfinished area. I remember you. This is Heartworld, yeah. Yeah, but I'm... The more I talk about it, the more I realize that I am not built to be a Greek philosopher, because that is like 90% of Greek philosophy. Is that style of like Socratic argumentation. I mean, it makes me realize why people seemed to despise Socrates and his like fellow sophists at the time, because imagine an entire movement of people who argued like Redditors constantly. I'd be upset at them too. Just a constant back and forth of, I believe this. Well, why do you believe this? Am I doing this right? Yeah, it is this. Because the story of Socrates is very, very funny. At least it is to me, but I have a soft spot for anything classics, so I suppose that makes sense. So the deal with Socrates was one of the main figures of a school of thought that was the Sophists. So if you ever hear someone say the word sophisticated, that word derives from the movement of the Sophists, like the Greek thinkers. And funnily enough, sophisticated is technically a negative term. If you're calling someone sophisticated, that technically means that, in a purely linguistic sense, that means you're calling them pretentious. But over time it's been like co-opted as a more positive term. Okay, where do I need to go? Ah, okay. So I'm in the wrong spot. It's another path. But the deal with Socrates was his entire style of argument revolved around what's even the best way to describe it? Comparison, I think, is the best word for it. Just constant comparison to other situations, other like schools of thought. Tons and tons and tons of metaphors. And you can see why that must have been extremely grating, especially when they started taking on they started taking on children and tutoring them in this specific style. And it was a way to be very intellectual about certain aspects of the world, but it was also a way to be deeply irritating to everyone you talk to. So they ended up taking Socrates to court over it. And this is one of the few times where I've heard the think of the children argument, and I've actually kind of sided with the parents. the argument of that Socrates was corrupting the youth and teaching them to talk back to their parents and all stuff like that. Now, I don't have a problem with him teaching them to talk back to their parents, because, you know, childhood independence is very important. Especially when it comes to, like, children forming their own identity. That being said, Socrates is very irritating, so... May as well walk up to the top of this. I seem to recall it's a straight line. So he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to death by poisoning through hemlock. But before he left, he gave them a hell of a show. That not only, during his trial, he did a couple of things. When asked to speak in his defense, he made the argument that not only was he not in the wrong... Oh, Marshmallow Shallows, shit. Alright, guess we're on back. Not only did he make the argument that he was not in the wrong for teaching the youths, but he saw himself as a... like, doing all of Greece a favor. And publicly testified before the Greek Senate that they should erect a statue in his honor. That takes balls. That takes balls of brass to go up on stage when your life is on the line and you're being accused of a crime, to go up on stage, to go up onto the podium and say, yeah, I did that, so what? I'm doing you a favor, you know. It's like, imagine being in a courtroom, being on trial for, like, whatever crime, and you look the judge dead in the eyes and say, make a statue of me. So, as you might be able to guess, that didn't get him any bonus points with the jury. And he was found guilty and sentenced. And as he was sitting in his jail cell, he was approached by a friend who worked in the Senate. And the friend basically told him, the door's open, dude. Like, you are more than welcome to just say, like, outward facing that you were wrong, and you accept responsibility, whatever, and you can just leave. Like, we will just leave the door open for you if you want to go. You just have to say that you have to say to the butthurt senators that you're sorry. And he flatly refused. And he just drank the poison of his own accord. Shit, wait, was he... I'm thinking of I might be thinking of a different Greek philosopher, but I think there was another philosopher who was sitting in his room when Greece was being invaded by some other civilization. And they were given the soldiers were given explicit orders not to kill the guy, and they killed him anyway. I think I'm thinking of Aristotle. But classics is fun. It makes me really sad that, from what I can gather, there are no... Like, there isn't really a classics department here at this college that I'm going to. Like, I was poking through trying to find, like, maybe a higher level classics class that I could take. I feel like that could be really fun, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like there's any. And it was shocking, too. Back in, I want to say it was middle of high school, I ended up going with my parents just up the East Coast to just go to a bunch of colleges and just see which college I liked. And one of the colleges that we ended up going to was it was called Washington and Lee University. And it was, it seemed alright. Like, I'm sure it's a fine place to go if you like the outdoors, but we got the vibe that it was very, like, ramshackle. Not ramshackle per se, because it has, like, tons and tons of, like, grant money to work with. Because the Lee in Washington and Lee, I'm pretty sure refers to Robert E. Lee, so it's a lot of, like, old money, pre-Civil War huge grants. But I don't know. The more we walked around campus, the more we realized that there was literally nothing to do. And maybe I would have liked that, because it's not like I'm doing much at this current college or my previous college. Though at least at the previous college, I did chorus. So I don't even know if Washington and Lee had a chorus. They never mentioned it. But I remember very distinctly. We were walking by, we got to the languages department, and there was just like this big statue of a globe, and they were talking about like, oh, you know, we have a Spanish, French, German, and I ended up piping up and asked, like, do you guys have a classics program? Do you have like Latin or Greek? And the tour guide, bless their heart, looked at me with like such a dead-eyed stare and was like, I have no idea. I have no clue. And that made me laugh, and that also made me think, like, yeah, I'm not going here. Okay, we're over 30, but let me go to Heartworld just real quick. And maybe if the next free expedition is cool, I might go there as well. art gallery. Oh, shit. You can never leave. You can never truly leave once Yumaniki gets its claws in you. You always just find new places to go. This is doubly true for Yumatuki. Because there have been back-to-back updates. They're not documented on the wiki yet. There was a update pushed by Yume Wasamiya, which, oh boy, we'll have to see what that's about. And then another update that was pushed by Onaira Kamara, which, you know, awesome. I love Onaira Kamara's work. But the fact that this game is still getting very regular updates by such talented people, I love it. I love it. I love this game. Again, if it even needed to be stated. Jumbo Room. Is this... This isn't Tatami Room. Where is this? Oh, got it. This is... Oh, this lets you get to the desktop. Right, I remember this place. This is cute. Okay, I think I'm good. Well, yeah, that's all I got for now, I think. I'm gonna go get some lunch, and then I might record something else today. Thanks so much for watching, y'all.